Well, the governor of Benue State, Reverend Father Hyacinth Alea, was on prime time to speak on the security situation in the state. Take a look.
Okay, so Guma local government shares border with Nasarawa State, and these are unmined borders and are quite extended. The Nasarawa border extends into the other local governments, including Gwe West and Agatu primarily. A context behind this, the anxieties we started having in this local government spanned as far back as 22, 23 years ago. But how it happened was the herders clashed with the farmers. This took quite a long period of time, and then eventually, in the last, say, 12 years, it shifted. It moved into the armed herders versus the entire communities. So again, the farmers were affected. They were every now and then driven off from their homes destroyed, and then they had to leave their farmlands as well. And since it's been there for quite some time, a good number of people were tired of seeing the repeat every now and then shifted into towns, but were still mining their farmlands. Of late, what we experience and what we see, it's more abhorrent. It is much and stronger, way beyond farmer-herder crisis.
Now for analysis and a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Constance Ikoko. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
And good morning to you, Nkechi. How are you today?
I'm great, Dr. Ikoko. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. And to review the papers with us today, we have Chuks Akunna. He is the Executive Director of Authority newspaper. And we were listening to the Governor of Benue State there, Mr. Hyacinth Alea. And before that, we had a special report on the carnage going on in Benue State. And yeah, Chuks, all eyes on Benue. It's a crisis.
Yes, not really surprising. If you rewind, 2001, Benue State was also in the news for the wrong reason. 19 soldiers were murdered in cold blood, and their bodies dismembered. And a very angry president, Olusegun Obasanjo at the time, sent soldiers into Zakibiam, if you recall, to actually fish out the killers. And we know that the military is not trained to handle such matters. And the unfortunate sequel was the burning down of Zakibiam, and that remains a very sore point in Nigerian history until today. So it's been a recurring decimal, and we keep trying to prefer same solution to a problem, and what we have is a recurring decimal scenario. Every time, Benue State, every time Benue State, every time Benue State. I think this is one crisis too many.
Definitely. We will have more on Benue, but first of all, let's go to this day newspaper and see what we have there. Here we have in CBN's return to orthodoxy, First Holdco faces $887 million exposure. The Central Bank of Nigeria is rolling out strict measures to strengthen banks' capital and to curb regulatory abuses. This, according to this report, is testing the resilience of financial institutions. The CBN, analysts believe, is moving to strengthen credit discipline enhance transparency, and compel banks to clean up their balance sheets ahead of the ongoing recapitalization exercise. We know that the health of a country's banks is a powerful indicator of the overall state of its economy. Healthy banks signal strong fundamentals, trust and stability in the financial system, sound monetary policy, effective regulation, and efficient credit flow. So lots of work for the CBN as a regulator, seeing that failing banks can destabilize the entire economy, isn't it, Chuks?
Yes, exactly. And if we also recall, it was in the wake of the 2019-2020 COVID pandemic that the CBN tried to move to protect the health of banks by implementing what you call the exposure, supervisory exposure. And what happened is that the new CBN policy now seeks to say, okay, well, we're going back to the basics, that it's enough to actually, it's high time we stopped giving what you call financial feeding bottles to banks. So banks, we've gone way past the pandemic, and what is required now is for you to clean up your books. So if you read that story, you see that financial analysts are saying that companies like financial institutions like First Holdco, might suffer an exposure of close to $900 million US. But the CBN is, standing firm and saying no, that this has to be done. You have to suspend several luxury, if you allow me to call them, several luxury spendings. Stop payment of dividends. Stop this. Directors cannot do this, cannot do that, until this is over. But this is a temporary thing that they wait and see how it pans out before thinking of reviewing the policy.
Definitely. So let's move on to the Guardian newspaper. CDS links military saboteurs to Benue massacre ahead of Tinubu's visit. CDS is the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa. The CDS has said this same thing severally in the past. Last year, he accused unnamed individuals of attempting to sabotage government efforts to address insecurity. But now, in the wake of the outrage over Benue massacre, he offers the same explanation, or some would say excuse. He says some individuals within the community are feeding vital information to the attackers. This is as the president plans to visit Benue. Of course, the president had to reschedule his trip to Kaduna State to go to Benue given the urgency. Your thoughts on this escalating carnage, and of course, the president's trip now heading to Benue State?
Yes, I think the president's visit to planned visit to Benue State, in my opinion, I think it's in response to what opposition figures, top opposition figures, have been criticizing the president of, that the president has not shown enough commitment to peace in Benue State. But if you also read the president's slip yesterday, the president was more or less saying, okay, yes, I sympathize with you, but your political leaders also should take responsibility for this carnage. If you recall, a few weeks, about 10 days ago, Governor Alaya accused certain unnamed Abuja politicians for being responsible for this carnage. And then a few days ago, he's also blaming Fulani herders. So you ask yourself, who really, is the governor really, in tune with what's happening in his state? Is he really in charge of security in Benue State? Because if you keep blaming on phantom enemies, in my opinion, you never get to solve the problem. Because you have a problem in your state and you're saying people in Abuja are the ones responsible for that. Then in a few days' time, you changed and said that it's cattle herders are responsible for this problem. So I guess that's why the president,
well,
in this
it's
confusion.
multifaceted, right? It's not one thing. There are several different factors, and that's why you hear different. Also, the CDS said they're saboteurs. So it's not one reason why we're having that problem in that state.
I think for the CDS to even come out and multiple times say that they're saboteurs, whether it's within the community at high level, it just sounds like we're playing games with people's lives. And we spoke about this yesterday. I think the analyst was emphasizing the fact that when you focus on blaming people, you are focusing less on the solution. And what we need now is solution. We heard the former president of the Senate saying, look, one of the basic fundamentals of government is to secure lives and the people's property. And if you cannot do that, you're creating a vacuum. And what fills vacuums? It's anarchy. And so for the governor blaming people in Abuja, and then our CDS blaming saboteurs and not naming them and shaming them and punishing them and having consequences put out, how does that give hope for the people? And when it comes to the president visiting Benue State, better late than never. It's very, very good and timely that he visits the state in person. That will bring some sort of hope to the people to know that, because we saw that report where they were crying and they were saying, look, are we actually part of Nigeria? So if the president is going there, that's all well and good. But further to that presidential photo op, they need to know that their right to life is secured.
Let's stay with Benue in Daily Trust. Let's see what's being reported by Daily Trust. Benue killings, David Mark warns of self-defense as Tinubu visits. The former Senate president said the failure of the authorities to address insecurity could force residents to resort to self-help. He described the killings as senseless, tragic, and unacceptable, adding that the government must rise to its responsibility or leave people with no option but to defend themselves. Again, calls for self-defense have increased over the years. Yolanda, you can come in here, but I guess it's easier said than done. If not, every community would have been armed to the teeth by now.
That's right. It's easier said than done, because you're asking normal everyday people, women, children, people who have never even held any arms, to come up and start fighting, who've never taken a life, and that in itself is such a traumatizing thought. And the government really needs to be accountable to its people, because at this point the situation in Benue is leaving many people afraid. We're seeing a repetition in different states as well. In Borno State, if you remember, we were also speaking about how there was also a blame on the political bigwigs, saying that, that there are also saboteurs there. And this does not provide much hope for the everyday person of Benue State right now. The reports I was seeing so many women and children. Is that who we are expecting to stand up and, defend themselves? It's quite sad. It's really quite sad. And
a lot of those communities are agrarian communities.
That's right. Those are rural communities.
Elderly people. There's a bit of information we have here of Nigerian law. So under Nigerian law, section 32, subsection 3 of the Criminal Code, self-defense is permitted in the following circumstances. A person reasonably believes that their life is in danger. A force used is proportional and necessary to repel attack. It is immediate and unavoidable. However, use of deadly force must be justified. You may also face prosecution if the response is excessive or premeditated. And then with regard to arming for protection, civilians are largely prohibited from owning firearms under Nigeria's Firearms Act unless licensed. So, circumstances here, like David Mark says, warrants for self-defense. Hopefully there will be a change in the situation. As the president heads to Benue, we will be bringing you more information about what is going on there. Let's move on to Daily Independent. SWF critical to close infrastructure gap, create jobs, according to Tinubu. This refers to the Sovereign Wealth Fund, of which President Bola Tinubu says should utilization is critical. This was said at a meeting of Africa Sovereign Investors Forum, and Vice President Kashim Shettima represented him. The theme was leveraging African sovereign wealth funds to mobilize global capital for transformative development in Africa. We know that Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund was a master stroke under the Goodluck Jonathan administration. It was set up in 2011, mainly to manage Nigeria's excess oil revenue and invest them for the benefit of future generations and economic stabilization, as well as, of course, infrastructure development. If it was well run then, I don't know about now. I think that the management has changed. But it's such an important instrument that could be hugely beneficial to the country if well handled. We know countries across the world that run SWFs, you know, Norway, the United States, Canada, Australia, Italy, France, all of them maintain sovereign wealth funds. Chooks, if you want to come in here, and these are really purposefully used for the benefit of their countries.
Yes, and I think that's why, looking back, you know, rightly said that when Sovereign Wealth Fund was created by former President Goodluck Jonathan, that, you know, it really, really served very useful purposes in Nigeria. And I think that's why President Tinubu, I guess it's going back to that to say, okay, let's see how we can work on leverage on this and actually create, swell the funds so that it will be of benefit to not only to Nigerians but to Africa. You know, rallying other African countries, you know, to say how we can actually, you know, use this as a vehicle to actually to improve the living conditions of Nigerians and, of course, Africans.
All right, moving on to New Telegraph. Rivers reject Tinubu's appointments request, Bode George tells Senate. Former Deputy National Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Chief Bode George, says the appointments by the president in Rivers are illegal, and the constitutionality is being constitutionality of the country is being disregarded, according to him. The president had requested confirmation for the appointment of a chairman and 6 members of the Rivers Independent Electoral Commission, the Rivers State Primary Health Care Board, the Rivers State Civil Service Commission, and the Rivers State Local Government Civil Service Commission. That's a lot of appointments, and the Electoral Commission and local government appointments will especially be controversial, and we know why, Nkechi. It's politics, it's power, it's control.
You know, and everyone is saying that all this is being carried out by a sole administrator that was not elected by the people. He's not accountable to them, but proposing who would basically oversee elections or health for the people, governance, and it just seems, or it just reeks of like federal overreach when you have like you mentioned, the Civil Service Commission, River State Independent Electoral Commission, and it's just very dangerous at this point. The balance of moving away from this state of emergency that has been declared in River State and using that to do things that usually the federal would not be able to do in states. It's very dangerous, I think.
And you know why that electoral commission is especially controversial? Because then they would have to run the elections, and we know how controversial elections are, whether it's at the state level,
and
at the local government level.
River State,
yes,
the elections, even when it's regular election, River State has always had high tensions during election. Everyone is always scared. Everyone is always worried what's going to happen, and having to now have potential elections in this manner is even bringing more tension to River State.
All right, on to Daily Sun. Ganduj condemns attack at APC Northeast Zonal Stakeholders Meeting. He described it as irresponsible and unpatriotic. The acts of thuggery, brigandage, and disruption by some members of the party is to be condemned, he continued. All this was contained in a statement by his senior special assistant on public engagement. The statement said it was wrong for party members to accost Ganduj on his way to his car in order to attack him, even after he noted that it was a joint ticket, President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima. Chooks, do you think this lays to rest the issue that we're dealing with here? I doubt.
No, of course not. In fact, if anything, it further heightens it. I did a report yesterday in my newspaper about how that Northeast rally or meeting may have actually sealed the fate of Vice President Kashim Shettima. Because, you know, before now, 22 APC governors elected on the platform of the APC had endorsed the president. Shettima was there, and of course, no mention was made of him. But we also should not lose sight of the fact that it is within the rights of a candidate to nominate whoever is going to be his running mate. It's like a husband. You cannot foist a bride on a man. you know, it's within his right to choose Shettima or not. So trying to untwist the precedent, as it were, you know, by supporters of Shettima may actually have a dangerous backlash, because as things are, and I knew this from the outset when Shettima said he was going to be in charge of security and the president in charge of the economy. And you ask yourself, what then is the role of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces if his vice president
it didn't
becomes...
pan out the way he wanted it.
Exactly. So, and there has been so much stories about the vice president being blocked from accessing the presidential villa, and several refutals by his office. So definitely, any discerning person will know that all is not well within between Shettima and his boss, President Tinubu.
Yeah. I mean, when you compare it to President Olusegun Obasanjo's tenure, the vice president was pretty powerful that time. Again, it depends on
No, first time.
Yes.
If you recall second time, he was
yeah,
converted
exactly,
into a
because he
spare tire.
almost betrayed him.
Yes.
Or he betrayed him, rather. And then, so the cat turned. Okay, let's quickly look at the Punch newspaper. A couple of headlines there. Benue bloodbath, still on Benue. CDS, IG launch cross-border manhunt for killers. And then onto Vanguard newspaper. There, Israel-Iran war, 330,000 flee Tehran. Oil price drops at 4%. Bloodletting, Tinubu shifts Kaduna trip, heads for Benue. And then to the international headlines, Daily Graphic. At parliamentary vetting of justices, Zamfe backs Supreme Court in North, and teachers aiding candidates to cheat in BECE warring WAEC. The Citizen newspaper, Youth, it's an emergency. One person was quoted as saying, stop focusing on the youth of 1976. They did their part. Pay attention to the youth of today. We are qualified but unemployed. Yolanda, I don't know if you have any comment on that story. We've always, you know, read or discussed the issues of unemployment in South Africa and the crisis, especially for the young people. It's now on the front burner.
Well, I don't really have much to say on this issue. You're right, the issue of unemployment keeps escalating in South Africa, but I think also it's becoming kind of a global trend with the way that economies are just emerging out of all the different factors that are going on at the same time, from tariffs to all sorts of things just going on worldwide. Now we have this war that is definitely going to affect the whole of the world in one way or the other, and so I just hope for the best for the South African economy at this point in time.
All right, the Times newspaper, Trump fails to back G7 call for Israel to cease fire. This means that Israel has widened its bombing offensive against Iran. In Canada, British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer led calls for a winding down of the conflict. Privately, Iran is also asking U.S. allies to persuade that country to step in to de-escalate the situation. Excuse me. No surprises here at all with regard to the U.S. stance. The Jewish lobby in America literally, it seems, drags that country into conflicts, you know, that it starts and it perpetuates, literally. Chooks, if you want to come in here.
Yes. In the wake of the attacks on by Israel on Iran, you know, the immediate reaction of the U.S. was to send strong warning to the government in Tehran that do not think of attacking any or harming any Israeli and American citizen or its assets. Now, if you try that, you know, there will be consequences. So it's not, like you say, it's not surprising that President Trump, you know, had to quickly cut short his trip, you know, to return to the U.S. What he told reporters was that he was going to go and continue the meeting in Washington to see how U.S. will get involved or not get involved in the unfolding crisis in the Middle East.
And we saw the bombing of Iran state TV.
Yeah.
Yes, and over 200 people already dead, over 1,000 people injured. Of course, they were targeting the communication of the country to make sure that they cripple it. Yeah, it's just crazy. And we also hear, or it's being reported, that a third of Iran's missile launchers have been destroyed. A lot going on there. Onto the Independent newspaper. Charlotte Philby, My grandfather was a double agent. It makes sense for the MI6 chief to be a woman. This is in regard to the announcement a few days ago that M16, the world's most secretive and traditionally male-dominated intelligence agency, is now headed by a woman. It's a historic moment, Nkechi. This right here is breaking a major gender barrier.
Yes.
It is also a historical milestone that helps to modernize the agency's image.
And you know, her name sounds like someone's name who should be heading the M16, really. And you know, she came up through tech, and that's also a space where it's quite male-dominated. Well, in the years that she came up in the tech space, that's a time where it was male-dominated, and she really thrived in that industry. And so it's just so logical that we have this person heading the M16, and we'll just
MI6 actually.
MI6. I keep saying M16.
MI6.
The MI6. Yes. So here's to Blaze. Not just for making history, but for putting women out there and just showing that, look, what a man can do, like they say, a woman can also do.
Not better.
I'd like to also add that it's really commendable, and just, you know, echo a little bit on what Nkechi has already said. It's really commendable to have a woman in this type of position. I think many times women are overlooked, yet we are, you know, very strong and powerful. And just like she said as well, her name very, you know, for the job, Blaze, but her look is very feminine, blonde hair, blue eyes, you know, the typical feminine softness that you'd expect out of a woman, and yet she is now the one heading, you know, one of the most renowned intelligence forces in the UK. And so it's very commendable, and it's very exciting. It's the stuff out of movies, to be honest.
Looks, they say, can be very deceptive.
That's right.
I mean, you spoke about
That's
her good looks, and that I guess that's one of the points, one of the reasons she's a very good spy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
This can be deceptive, you know. You know, very professional work. Congratulations
Yes.
to her and good luck. And finally, metro.co.uk, Asian grooming gang victims are failed by blindness, ignorance, prejudice, defensiveness. We'll have to leave it there. Chuks Akunna, Executive Director of Authority newspaper, thank you for joining us this morning.
And thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikoku, for helping us make sense of the front pages today. That's all the time we have for you here on Daybreak. I am Nkechi Nana.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.